Come down and share some Christmas dinner.
Ho, ho, ho.
Be sure to bring the missus
Bring
too.
the missus. We got no turkey for our stuffing. Why don't we stop you?
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. Yes, from the original Annie, and not the politically correct one that no longer mentions Republican Great Depressions. Now, this all sounds like, really depressing stuff. Look at this. Here we have this study in today's Financial Times that conservative economics, Friedman, Milton, and Thomas, Friedman economics killed 1 million men in the former Soviet states. We've got this report from the BBC that 35,000 people committed suicide in the United Kingdom, in Australia, as a consequence of some years. It wasn't even the majority of the years during the 20th century when conservatives ruled that country. And the same in the United Kingdom, and I think you can extrapolate this all over the world. We're seeing it now in the United States. You're seeing spouse abuse, you're seeing child abuse, you're seeing suicide rates going up as a consequence. It all sounds very depressing. Here's the good news, and this is really the good news. We know how this works, we know why this works, and we know how to get out of this. Franklin Roosevelt got us out of this the last time. The only problem that we have is that there are a bunch of right-wing crazies in Congress and in the corporate media who are going off on it's socialism. That's right, you're going to have socialism. Don't you realize it's going to be socialism? It is just astounding. I mean, that word should be banned in the United States. Hey, I can hear the conservatives now. Hartmann wants to ban a word. But here's the problem. If you define socialism as taking taxpayer dollars and providing services to people, then what? You want to do away with our socialist police departments? How about our socialist fire departments? What about our socialist roads? Our socialist army? How about our socialist Food and Drug Administration, keeping our drugs pure and safe? How about our socialist U.S. Department of Agriculture that keeps us from dying from salmonella? By and large. How about our socialist FEMA that comes in if we have a disaster, hopefully once it's put back together and elevated back to a cabinet position under the Obama administration? How about our socialist schools? Well, I know the conservatives want to privatize those. But the bottom line here is we understand now how it is that Republican policies and conservative economics devastate this country and make a very small number of people very rich. We saw it in the 20s, the 1920s, in the 1930s. We saw it in the 1880s. We saw it in the 1840s. They've seen it in the United Kingdom over and over again. We've seen it in governments all over the world. We saw it down in Chile. When we overthrew Allende and put in Pinochet, we have seen it, and then we saw it more recently when they privatized Social Security down there. We saw it in Argentina. I'm mixing my countries up, but you get it. We are seeing this all over the world. So there is something we can do about it, and we damn well better start. And that means pushing our elected representatives to make these things happen and make it work, because it is possible. It can work. 866-303-2270, our telephone number. ThomHartmann.com, by the way, our live free chat room. AirAmerica.com for our live free video stream. And Dimitri, I'm sorry, I don't see a city where you're calling from.
Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Oh, great. Thank you, Dimitri. What's up?
Great show, Tom. You exemplified the devastating effect that neoliberal economics have on the people on our planet. But just last week, you had a neoliberal, David Gaines, I believe, claiming that the problem is the media.
Yeah.
He used offense as the best means of defense by turning truth exactly on its head.
Yes, and
the
we should...
media is in fact responsible for the economic collapse of the United States, but not the liberal media of his imagination, but the real conservative media, but failed that fail to question neoliberal policies.
That's right. And Dimitri, if I may interrupt you just for a moment, because you keep using the word neoliberal, which every European immediately understands. Pretty much everybody all around the world understands what that word means.
Yeah.
But most Americans don't know
Reaganite.
what it. Right. But most Americans don't know what it means. And so when we talk about neoliberal economics on this show, I typically refer to it as conservative economics or Reaganomics or Thatcheronomics.
Is practiced by Reagan and Thatcher when it comes
Right.
to free trade, unions, health care, welfare. The American corporate media has always been with Ronald Reagan.
Yes,
and it is a part and parcel of the economic collapse. It is responsible, but not in a way that David Gaines thought it was.
Yep. Well said, Dimitri. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening to us there in Fort Lauderdale. Hack in Florence, South Carolina. Hey, Hack, what's on your mind?
How are you today, sir? I'm great and getting better.
Okay, me too.
I have one point to make against what you're saying and bringing up is all these newcomers to the, talking down about the market and what's going to occur. They were all late. Robbie Batra was right on the money. He follows my philosophies greatly. I would prefer hearing more from him than these soothsayers that are so late now they're talking about disasters. I think we have a potential for a great market now, particularly if our new president uses the funds that we are going to give, we the taxpayer are going to give, to try and get this market back together, particularly if he does something like makes the Small Business Administration tenfold bigger and let the banks make their money doing just services for us lending money to our own people.
Yep, and also have the Small Business Administration actually support small business. I've run a couple of businesses in my day that were actually small businesses, and I looked into getting a loan from the Small Business Administration. And you got to be basically a medium size. I mean, you've got to be a fairly big business in order to qualify for a small business loan. It is nuts. But Hack, you're absolutely right, and this is where we have to hope that, and not hope, forget the hope. We have to push. We have to be assertive. We have to get in front of our politicians and say, Franklin Roosevelt figured out how to do it. Barack Obama can do it. We have to support him in doing it. And by the way, $750 billion and a third of it being tax cuts ain't going to cut it. Tax cuts don't do squat to stimulate an economy. That is a fantasy that was promoted by Ronald Reagan in order to justify dropping taxes on people making more than $3.2 million a year, down from 74% to 27%. And it was a lie. It was a lie then. It's a lie now. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now. And it won't work. And Obama needs to back away from using tax cuts as a stimulus because they're not a stimulus. In fact, he needs to raise taxes because if you look at the history of this country and every other country around the world, what you see is that when you raise taxes so that you're not paying so much interest on a debt, you start to balance the budget, you start to pay down your debt, and you spend some of that money, government appropriately spends that money to provide actual infrastructure and including and particularly human infrastructure. Let's strengthen the human capital that we have. Let's give everybody in the United States who's capable of going to college a free college education, or at least a very cheap one, so you can put yourself through college just with a summer job. Like I did, like you could do in the United States, although I didn't complete college, but like you could do in the United States back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s until Reagan took all of that apart. And in every other country in the world, it's just, industrialized country in the world, it's just free. Let's go back to that, and let's put in place trade schools for those people who don't want to go to college or can't go to college. Let's, or have no inclination. Let's create a whole new generation of journeymen, really high quality, well trained mechanics and bricklayers and right across everything, all of the trades, all of the skilled trades. Let's go, where are our tool and die makers, for example? So anyway, I'm ranting. Ed in Lake Oswego. Hey, Ed.
Hey, good morning, sir. I'm going to write letters to the editor saying exactly what you said about cutting taxes leads to disaster. I mean, especially in the richest people. You had Beinhardt on, and he was just remarkable.
Yes.
Yeah. And also
Larry Beinhardt has nailed it.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, people ought to listen. And his newest article is absolutely terrific, too. Thank you so much for having him on. Tom, when are we going to have tariffs mentioned in a reasonable fashion back? Do you know?
Everybody is afraid to talk about tariffs. I think that I'm the only guy on the radio talking about it. I may be the only guy on the radio who understands what a damn tariff is, which makes me a little crazy. But, and thank you for bringing it up. We have to take a break here in just a couple of seconds. But just very quickly, the way that historically we ran this country is we said we're going to protect our domestic industries. Alexander Hamilton laid this out in 1791. He said, and this is the way it works. If there's $1 worth of labor on a pair of shoes made in the United States and you can make those shoes with 20 cents worth of labor in China, then when those shoes hit this border, there's an 80-cent import tax. If you can make those shoes for 50 cents in Mexico, then when they hit this border from Mexico, there's a 50-cent import tax. Those are called tariffs. And what they do is they level the playing field for labor, and they cause companies to say, what the heck, I might as well make it in America. And that's the only reason we made shoes in the United States from 1791 until the 1980s when Reagan started taking apart tariffs. It's the only reason we made shirts and underwear and jeans and suits and clothing that we no longer make in this country, because we had a tariff-based system. And it's the reason why China still has import tariffs. It's the reason why Japan still has import tariffs. It's the reason why South Korea still has import tariffs. But we drank the Kool-Aid. We drank the Friedman Koolaid.